What's happening, y'all? The regular season is done. The Eagles. Hold up one sec. I know my wife's watching right now. She'll be texting me in a minute if I don't turn this hat around so y'all can see my eyes. Eagles are 14-3. Phenomenal season. So much to talk about. Expectations are so high. So much to get to. First of all, I want to thank you guys, for your support throughout the year. As always, please like, subscribe, hit that notification button, and tell everybody you know about the show. I'm already trying to figure out, how I'm going to keep this going, because you guys know that by the time I get to the end of the year, I'm cooked. But I got to keep this going, keep you guys informed. Maybe I'll dive into some draft stuff this year, some free agency stuff. We shall see. But anyhow, thank you guys for all the support, all your support, for our new pre and post game show, sponsored by Bet Parks and presented by Pond Hockey. Every game day, we're right here doing the same thing, me, myself, Derek Gunn, and Mark Farzetta. And if you missed my weekly TV show, I think you guys will enjoy this one. You can see it on PHL 17 tomorrow night, and you can catch it on NBC Sports Philly on Thursday night. But if you miss it all together, just come back to the channel here on YouTube, Seth Joyner Show on YouTube. I had Philly's favorite son, Brian Dawkins, on today, and we taped the TV show today, and he was awesome, very engaging, very informative. I think you guys will like that, so go and check that out. So let's get to our Eagles. I guess the 60 million pound elephant in the room right now is Jalen Hurts still in concussion protocol as of today. Weird, because the team practices tomorrow, and for all intents and purposes, if he misses practice tomorrow, it's more than likely that one of these backup quarterbacks is going to lead us into into the playoffs. Just weird, that someone can be in a protocol for 3 weeks in a row darn near. But, everybody deals with these concussions differently. And obviously the most important thing, is his overall long-term health. Let's just talk about last week's game just for a fleeting moment. Crazy seeing what essentially evolved into a preseason game for the season finale. But it was great to see Tanner McKee get out there and show us what he has. 27 for 41, 269 yards. I believe he had 2 touchdowns. I think he was sacked twice and 100 rating. And even better, Jahan Dotson, the forgotten guy. And everybody, complains about what he can and what he can't do. I think he's just a victim of circumstance here, because we saw if you give him some targets that he can make some plays. I think he had 6 catches on probably 8 or 9 targets for 94 yards, 13.5 yards per catch. It's a lot of miles to feed. So unfortunately for him, he doesn't get anything but the crumbs. Had more yards in one game than he did the entire year as the number 3 wide receiver on this football team. Just a good outing. Good to see Sidney Brown get out there, and fly around like a human missile and make some plays and get his first interception of the year. Good win for the Eagles backups, because, basically the Giants played their ones across the board, and the Eagles played their 2s and 3s, and we still won the game. I guess that kind of gives you an idea of where the Giants are and just how deep and how good of a roster that Howie Roseman has built for this football team. Now let's fast forward a bit, because, the big game, The rubber's about to meet the road because everything that you do leads up to this point in time. You know, it's now one and done. It's win or go home. And all eyes and all aspirations are set upon the Super Bowl 59 in New Orleans. And the Eagles are one of those teams, in my opinion, that's got a fantastic shot at getting there. The number 2 seed, we got the Green Bay Packers coming in again. They got a lot of drama and whatnot going on around them right now as far as injuries are concerned. Christian Watson, their big play home run hitter, deep ball threat, towards ACL Sunday night. He's done for the season. And from what I understand, Jordan Love is, he's going to be okay. He's saying he's going to play, but he sustained some kind of elbow / right wrist injury that took him out of the game the other night. So that's something that we should be watching and see how that all plays out as well. But this Packers team is quite a bit different than the Packers team that we faced back on the 5th of September in Sao Paulo, Brazil. The Eagles won that game 34-29, but I think both of these teams look markedly different. The Green Bay Packers have kind of, defense has evolved, especially the last few weeks. Defense has gotten much better. Just to kind of give you an idea how much better they are 6th in total defense, 6th in points per game at 19 points per game. They're 12th in third down conversions at 37%. Not so hot in the red zone. They're giving up 60%, scores down there and they're ranked 20th. But against the run, they're ranked 7th. They're only giving up 99 yards a game. They're just slightly below the Philadelphia Eagles defense, who's only giving up 104 and ranked 10th. And then they're giving up 215 yards passing per game through the air, and they're ranked 15th. So, the defense for the Green Bay Packers has always been somewhat of, the redhead stepchild, if you will, of that organization. They've always been built on offense, from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers and now Jordan Love. It's really about the offense. And the defense, in large part, over the years, is that area of the team that I feel like that has hurt their chances of getting back to another Super Bowl. But they're playing a lot better, and the Eagles offense is going to be challenged. And I think they're going to be challenged in a different way than they were challenged early in the year. Listen, they had to overcome a lot because the first 2 series of the season against the Green Bay Packers, they turned the ball over in back-to-back series. Jalen Hurts throws an interception, then he fumbles the ball. Defense stands tall. I think we could have looked at that as things to come. Defense stands tall. They only get 6 points out of the situation and puts our offense in a position where, now we can continue to compete. Because if you go down 14-0, right out the gate, you're climbing uphill the entire way. The Green Bay Packers offense, we know what Jordan Love can do. They got on a tear last year at the end of the year, and he was just throwing the ball all over the map. He's been a little inconsistent this year. And I don't know whether it's the injury, because, he did hurt his elbow in the game against the Eagles towards the end of that game. And now that elbow is injured again, and we don't know how severe it is, or whether it has, any of the repercussions from that earlier injury or what the circumstances were. But this team is not peaking the way that it was peaking last year this time. Josh Jacobs, different kind of running back for them, much more of a power running back. The Eagles are going to have to really put their big boy pads on, because Matt LaFleur is the type of coach that, listen, he's going to run the football, because he understands that you got to run the football in order to get yourself in a situation, get yourself in position where you can actually throw the ball and you get play action working. So he's going to run the ball. They're going to try to establish, dominating the line of scrimmage, and the Eagles defense is going to have to stand up in a big way and shut that down and try to make them one-dimensional and put the game solely on Jordan Love's arm. And they've got some really good wide receivers. They've got four different wide receivers beyond the one that just got injured, Christian Watson, and neither one of them are wide receiver one, which makes it very difficult for defensive coordinators to say, okay, who am I going to take away? Because they've got four different guys that they can go to at any time, and Jordan Love does a good job of spreading the ball around. They also have a pretty decent pass catching tight end, Kraft, and he actually leads the team with 7 touchdowns on the season. So it's not going to be a cakewalk for the Eagles, but in my mind, there's no doubt about it. They are certainly the superior team. And as revved up as the link is going to be, we got to make sure that Jordan Love and every other Packer can't even hear themselves think when they're on offense. So it'll be interesting to see how this matchup plays out. How confident am I in the offense? Listen, if Jalen Hurts is back, he's probably going to be a little bit rusty. That's just, there's no way that a quarterback can play 12 plays in a month and you throw him out there and think that everything is going to go smooth. But this is the path that the organization chose. A lot of people will say, well, he just never got out of concussion protocol. I don't know. I don't know any more than you guys know. I don't know whether they just, because there's a difference between you testing a guy in concussion protocol, on a daily basis. And I'm not sure how often he has to be tested. So I'm not sure there's a difference between being tested and still just being in the protocol without being tested. Who knows? Did the Eagles, was that their approach? Once they made the decision to shut everybody else down, okay, and once they got the win that pretty much locked them up in week 16, that locked them into the number 2 position, maybe their thought was, okay, we're not going to play any of the starters. We're not going to announce it to next week. Saquon's got his 2,000 yards. We're not going to give him the opportunity to go for the record. We're going to shut everybody down, so there's no need of us rushing Jalen through the concussion protocol. So let's just leave him there until we're ready to move him out of that position. I don't know. That could be the case. I just don't know for certain. Nobody knows what's going on. But I just find it very, very interesting that a quarterback can actually be in a player can be in concussion protocol for 3 weeks off of something that just really didn't look like much of a ding. But I've stated it before, I'll say it again. Everybody's different. Some guys, they get a little bump in the head, they're in a concussion protocol, they come back and they play the next week. Some guys, and it's usually guys who've had a history of concussions, sometimes it takes them 2, 3, 4 weeks to get to a place where they're ready to get back on the field. I don't know. I'm just kind of speculating. And I got to speculate on who's going to be the starter if for some reason or another we wake up tomorrow and the news is Jalen Hurts is still in concussion protocol. Who's the starter? I mean, after what we saw from Tanner McKee last week, a lot of people would say Tanner McKee, but Tanner McKee has only started 1 game in the National Football League. That was last week. Kenny Pickett, how good are the ribs? Can he get through a game? Kenny Pickett's got some experience. Kenny Pickett started over 25 games in the National Football League, but at the other end of the spectrum, there is a reason why the Pittsburgh Steelers made him expendable. So all of those questions kind of come into focus here as we, approach the game on Sunday. But the one thing that we know that the Eagles can do with the best offensive line in the National Football League, and tip of the hat to Landon Dickerson, Cam Jurgens, first-year starter at center, and Lane Johnson being named to the Pro Bowl. What a travesty. What a travesty that they left Jordan Mailata off that list. And in reality, it wouldn't shock me to see Mekhi Becton be named the NFL Comeback Player of the Year for what he's been able to accomplish. But in reality, you probably could have taken the whole Eagles offensive line to the Pro Bowl. That's how well they play. When you dominate and you have a running back that runs for that many yards, come on. There's no way that Jordan Mailata should have been left off that team. But I understand the politics of the Pro Bowl. Been there, done that before, been in his shoes before. There were times where I should have made it that I didn't. You just got to go, just keep playing, and at some point in time, it'll turn in your favor. But what we do have is the best offensive line, in my opinion, in the National Football League, and the best running back behind that line in the National Football League. And I don't think that there's many teams that can really prevent us from doing what we want to do, running the ball when we want to run it. Now, what's the game plan? The Packers are going to stack the box. They're especially if we're without Jalen Hurts and probably even with Jalen Hurts. They're going to stack the box, and they're going to try to figure out a way to get Saquon Barkley under wraps, and they want to force the quarterback's hand, whoever it is, to win the game. Well, we got enough guys on the outside that can take care of that. And I wouldn't go so far. I wouldn't discount coming out throwing the ball quite a bit in the first couple of series, just because if you're going to load the box, and this is the chess match that goes on. You get 2 high safety, 6-man box, run the ball. You got man on man, 5 offensive linemen and a tight end. You got man on man blocking. Let's run the football, okay? When they drop an extra guy in the box, there's no one to account for that guy. That's the quarterback's guy. That's the time where you should be going play action and actually throwing the ball. And I think that the Eagles can get away with some of that early with the short to intermediate passes. You're going to have a single high safety, wide receiver wide left, wide receiver right and left. And, quarterback, we're going to look one way and throw the slant the other way. Okay, you get the guy way off, we're going to raise up and throw it to him, make the cornerback come up and make a tackle. He get up and press, we're going to run our fade routes. I think that those opportunities are there because then once you start completing balls like that, now you're going to force the defense to get out of that 7-man look or 8-man look. You're going to force them to get back to 2 high safeties. Now we can turn on the gas as far as the run game is concerned and start dominating the line of scrimmage. Just a change of pace. I'm not the offensive coordinator. I'm not trying to tell Kellen Moore or Nick Sirianni what to do. I'm just thinking, I got my football cap on, and I'm just thinking about if I was in that position, what I would do, because most teams are going to come and they're going to try to put the game in Jalen Hurts or whoever's playing quarterback's hands. That's what they want to do. As a defensive unit, you want to make a team one-dimensional. So that's how they're going to do it. But if that's what they want to do, then we need to use that against them in every way imaginable. But it's going to be interesting to watch the strategy. I asked Brian Dawkins, I said, hey, man, if I could get you in that locker room and have you talk to these guys, especially the young guys, because there's so many young players who have never been in this position before. I can't explain to you, I can't express to you how much more intense Sunday is going to be because of the finality of it all. You either win or you go home. There's no next week. There's only next year when you get knocked out of the playoffs. But it's a heightened sense of intensity. It's the same way when you go from preseason to regular season. And trust me, when you go at every phase that you move through the playoffs, you get a heightened sense of intensity. The game is faster, it's quicker, it's more aggressive. And, you can't get too high because, you don't want to exert all your energy out the gate, but you got to be able to match the intensity that the opposing team is going to bring. And in some situations, you have to exceed it. So he kind of talked about that, about, being even keeled, not trying to do too much early, being focused and locked in on what it is that you got to do. Reading your keys, make sure you, especially on defense, making sure you got great eye discipline. They're going to be running a lot of motion here and motion there. And I think what hurts a lot of football teams, when they get all that motion is if I'm supposed to be keying the uncovered offensive lineman and I see some motion and my eyes go with him, now all of a sudden I can't see what that uncovered lineman is doing. I got to be disciplined enough to understand, okay, if I got this guy over here in man coverage, but I'm keying here, I don't care what the other guy's doing. That's not my concern. My concern is keying that uncovered lineman so, A, I know whether it's run or pass. If it's run, I'm reading the blocking scheme. If it's pass, I'm either going to get my guy right now or I'm dropping back in coverage. But guys get themselves in trouble with all this ghost motion and jet motion and every other kind of motion, and the guy comes flying by, and instead of them focusing their eyes on where it should be, they're looking somewhere else, and by the time they react, they're already beat. So he just talked about those types of things. and trying to make sure that you're focused and locked in on your assignments, understanding what it is you're supposed to do on every single call, every blitz, every zone, every man concept, every zone blitz, making sure that you're not the guy that's making the mistake that hurts your team, because playoffs is different from this perspective. People always talk about, oh, if that one play wasn't the difference between us winning and losing. In the playoffs, it certainly is. Okay, it's different. A play can happen in the first quarter that can determine the outcome of the game. Now, people don't like to admit that, but it's absolutely true. So every single game, every single play, I should say, is important. How you deal with it, how you focus on it, how you play it. And a lot of times what happens too is, guys got to learn how to, when you make a bad play in the playoffs for sure, the biggest thing you got to do is you got to forget about it. You got to move on. You got another play the next down. You got another series of plays that's coming up. So you can't get stuck dwelling on that mistake that you made. You got to refocus your mind on what you have to do and realize that you're going to have some plays here or there where you don't play it exactly the way you want to play it. You're going to have some plays here and there where the opponent beats you. Guess what? They get paid to play this game too. It's hard to dominate, every single play in a 60-minute game. And I tell people all the time, as a player, we used to get grades. And trust me, if you can average somewhere between 75 and 80%, grade-wise, what your assignment is, how you played your assignment, so on and so forth, you played a pretty damn good game. You played a pretty damn good game. A lot of people would look at 75% and say, man, that's pretty darn average. But trust me, those guys on the other side, they got coaches over there. They got great players over there. They're aggressive over there. So sometimes, you eat the bear, sometimes the bear eats you. That's just the nature of the game. But just trying to be locked in for these young guys is of grave importance to me, because they're going to experience a level of intensity that they have never, ever experienced before. I'm going to ask my producer to take a quick peek in the chats. If there's any interesting questions up there, I'll jump into it. I got about 7 minutes before I'm going to go to break. And when I come back after the break, hopefully Chris will be in the backstage so we can bring him on and chat it up, the last 30 minutes. But if there's anything interesting up there, Lecco, throw it up. If you guys want to see something on the whiteboard, I had no intentions on doing the whiteboard today, but if you guys got something that you really want to know about and you want me to break it down within the next 5 minutes, throw up a question. I'll throw it up here right quick and I'll break it down for you, okay? Fanny wants to know, do I think this game will involve more situational play calling than playbook play calling? You know what, Fanny, I'm of the opinion that the Eagles, I don't even believe that the Eagles have a first 15. I really don't. And I think that's one of the reasons why they start so slow or have started so slow this year. I believe that they run plays that they probably expect for the opponent to expect for them to run, solely so that they can get a cue as to how the defense is going to play them, and then they adjust as they go. It's twofold, because in one way, why wouldn't you anticipate what they're going to do and try to attack what you think they're going to do? At the other end of the spectrum, it's really, really great coaching, if you think about it, to be able to adjust on the fly. Now, they don't have a lot going on in the first quarter, but the second and the third quarter, if you go back and you look at them throughout the season, they have just absolutely exploded. And so when you got a coaching staff that can make in-game adjustments like that, that is something just phenomenal. So, listen, situational football is just different. You see these coaches and they got these big old sheets with all this writing on it. In each section, you've got formations. On the other side, you may have situations, 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, certain parts of the field. You want to be prepared and have all of that stuff on your call sheet so you don't have to go through the mental gymnastics to try to figure out what to do in that situation, because you planned it. Boom, you turn the sheet over. Okay, it's 4th and 1. We're midfield. we feel like we want to go for it. The analytics guys telling me, what the numbers are. And I've got 6, 7, 8 plays right here that I can choose from. Half of them are run plays, half of them are pass plays. But I'm prepared. And whatever it is that I feel like in that moment suits the situation. If I feel like they're going to play off and play coverage, hey, we're going to run the ball. If I feel like they're going to come after us, hey, we're going to max protect it and send 2 guys out in the route and try to win a one-on-one. So there's a lot that goes into it. It'll just be interesting to see how they come out and how they deal with this Green Bay Packers defense. They're not a ultra aggressive defense. They got a couple of good pass rushers, but I'm not worrying about them, coming with blitzes like crazy unless we get down in the game or unless we get behind the chains, okay? Next question. The Ream 321 wants to know, do I think the Eagles trying to get an advantage, making the Packers think they're going to start one of their backup quarterback? Hey, potentially. I was just talking to my agent, about this, when I was driving over for the show. The Green Bay Packers don't know who to prepare for. They don't know whether Jalen Hurts is going to get out of concussion protocol. They don't know whether Kenny Pickett's ribs are good enough for him to play. And I don't know whether the Eagles plan on starting, this young quarterback with one starter under his belt that looked phenomenal last week. They don't know. So it could be an advantage. Absolutely could be an advantage. Maybe that's how they're playing it. All right? Next question. Man, we just turned this into a Talk to Him Tuesday, huh? Jason wants to know, do I think that Jordan Davis will be a big piece against the Packers in the run game? He seems to be more important than we think. Hey, listen, I talked about it, taping my show today. Jordan Davis has played pretty good. Now, the statistics don't bear it out. It's hard to see. But you see how dominant he was last week in the first 4 series of that game. He dominated the line of scrimmage. Most of the time in running situations, depending on what kind of front the Eagles are in, either he or Jalen Carter, or if they're in a 6-man front, both of them wind up getting double teamed. I like the movement that I'm seeing from Jordan Davis. Not only did he play the run well last week, but he also got out on the screen and made a tackle on the screen, which tells me that he's hustling to the ball. He's going to play a big role because even if you double team him, very few teams have been able to move him off the ball in the double teams. And now that he's starting to get a little more active and starting to, grow into, his movement a little more, now maybe he believes that, okay, I can get rid of a guy and I don't just have to stay in a 5-yard area, but I can get out and start running to the ball and making some plays. So he's going to be an important piece, an important part of why the Eagles are going to have success against this running game. And listen, Josh Jacobs ran for 1,329 yards this past season. 15 rushing touchdowns. I didn't know that till I looked up the stats. He had 15 rushing touchdowns this year and 1 receiving touchdown. That dude can play, and he's a load, and he runs to run people over. Out front, Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, congrats on your first Pro Bowl, young man. Ajomo, Booker the fourth, Milton Williams. These guys are going to play a major role because they're going to have to stand up, and they're going to have to stand up tall against a team that's really going to want to try to run the ball. All right, let's get one more in before we go to break. Tyson wants to know schematically, how do we attack the Packers' offense? Again, I will say they've got to get Josh Jacobs in the running game under control. They got a couple of big guys back there. I forget the backup's name, but he is a big bruiser, a big guy. Guys like that, you got to get to them like you're playing Derrick Henry. Get to them before they get their shoulders squared up. They got a couple of fullback types. When they want to go big and they want to, beat you up, they can certainly do that. But the Eagles' main objective coming out of the gate, let's figure out how we get that run game under control. And if they come out and they want to throw it to start the game off, by all means, go ahead. Vic Fangio is smart enough, good enough, flexible enough to make the adjustment along the way. And then what we get is, we'll force them to kind of change their hand, change their mode of attack, and figure out a way to, make them do what it is we want to do. We want to dictate to them, how this game is going to go. All right? Let's get a quick break. When I come back, hopefully my man Chris Long is ready to go, and we will chop it up the last 30 minutes of the show.
It's happening again. Those missed tackles are starting to stack up. Your friends pleading with players who can't hear them. Sweating it out week after week. But not you. Why? Because whether they score or not, there's always another way to win on the BetParx app. New casino users score up to $1,000 bonus back in their first 24 hours.
At Pond Lee Hockey, we're neither a pond nor a hockey team. In fact, I don't even know how to skate.
Cut.
We're the injury law firm that you want fighting for you.
With our vast network of attorneys across the country, we know the playbook on injury law.
It's how Pond Lee Hockey recovered billions of dollars for more than 100,000 injured and disabled workers.
And we know we can do the same for you.
So give Pond Lee Hockey a call. No other law firm will fight harder for you.
And you'll never pay a dime until we win.
Oof. Stuck paying for that old phone? Don't be. At Verizon, we'll pay off your phone, and you'll get iPhone 16 with Apple Intelligence on us. Now with Genmoji. That's a value of up to $1,600. Only on Verizon.
Since 1893, Weber Display and Packaging has been Pennsylvania's leading manufacturer of corrugated packaging and displays. We're family owned with 4 Philadelphia locations, 2 converting facilities, a warehouse, and a fulfillment center. Designed through delivery, we exceed customer needs. Weber Display and Packaging. Our core values drive everything we do. Come join our team.
At Revolution X, we know that fortunes are made in times of uncertainty. Are you selling your investment real estate? Are you interested in deferring your tax with a 1031 exchange? At RevX, we're experts in 1031 exchange planning and the use of passive real estate options using DSTs. Not in the midst of an exchange and want to invest in real estate but don't know where to start? Revolution X has institutional grade real estate options for any size investor right now. Set up a consultation at RevXWealth.com. RevX, defer the tax, maximize the gain.
Guys, welcome back. My guest tonight, I got a tremendous amount of respect for him, not only for what he accomplished on the football field, but, foundationally what he does off the field. This guy does a lot of great work off the field. You guys know him well. He's a member of the 2017 Super Bowl 52 champions here in Philadelphia. Just a phenomenal guy. I love chatting it up every time I see him. Welcome to the show, Chris Long.
Seth, what's up, man?
What's happening, boss? 2-time Super Bowl champion. I don't want to leave that out.
No, you know what? But the best one was in Philly.
Oh, no doubt about that. No doubt about it. There's no place like Philly. I always tell people, Philadelphia is like Kansas and Dorothy. You just click your heels because there's no place like home, baby.
No, you're right. And when I got to see you last time over there at Steak 48 for our event, and I appreciate you plugging the work we do off the field, but appreciate you even more for showing up. Seeing you guys like you, Harold, Mike Quick, dudes like that, and then guys like Todd Harrimans and AJ Feely, and guys that kind of bridge the gap generationally. It's just a great tradition, right? And it's the fans are second to none. So anytime we can get together is a good time, and I appreciate you. I'm glad to be on the show.
No doubt, my friend. So let's jump into it. I had Brian Dawkins on my TV show this morning, and we talked about the difference between the regular season and when you get into the postseason, and how the intensity changes, and how every single play can be the play that's a major difference in the game. If I can insert you in this locker room tomorrow morning to talk to these young players, because there's a lot of, especially on the defensive side of the ball, there's a lot of young players and a lot of players on this team that's never been in this position before. What would you tell them?
Well, Seth, it'd be pretty simple. I mean, it's exactly what I told the group in 2017. And I was very flattered to get up there and be able to talk to the team. They had a number of veterans talk to the team, and a lot of it, centered around, oh, this guy had won a Super Bowl last year. He really knows what it takes. Listen, I had been there 1 year in the playoffs. I spent 8 years of my career, my whole prime, the whole thing, on a team that was 2-14, 1-15, never made the playoffs. So to me, it was totally foreign when I pulled up in New England at 32 years old or whatever I was, and got a chance to play my first playoff game. And the lesson I learned was I had waited entirely too long to try to make a play in the playoffs. And when I got in there in New England in the first quarter of my first playoff game, I had some of the worst plays of my season. And it wasn't really about the competition. It was about me trying to do too much. And, it's funny. People always say, hey, veteran players know what they're doing in the playoffs. Well, we see it every year, Seth, veteran players making boneheaded mistakes. And you see young guys thriving and making big plays. And so I think sometimes people make the moment bigger than what it is. It is a big moment, and it's going to be faster. And I'm sure Brian talked about the speed of the game as it elevates from preseason to the regular season and the playoffs, which it is faster. But when I got a chance to talk to the team, I said, hey, let the play come to you. I think that's the most important thing. You'll know innately when it's time to go make a play. As a defensive end, it might have been the fourth quarter, waiting to bust out my spin move or some counter that I hadn't used on a tackle for much of the game. But for the most part, to me, it's about letting the play come to you. The play doesn't care who makes it. And it's funny, I was just talking to Zach Ertz, who's now the enemy, a couple of days ago. He's like, what was that thing you said? So you can bet he's probably telling the Commanders the same thing, but that's what it's all about. It's about doing your job, and don't make it any more complicated than it needs to be. You've been doing this for 18 weeks now, and you had the preseason on top of that. You've been doing it a long time. You know the right thing to do. You know the right technique. The hay is in the barn. It's your job to go out there and play and adapt to the speed of the game, but make decisions that aren't going to put you on somebody else's highlight reel trying to get on the highlight reel yourself.
In some ways, this year for the Philadelphia Eagles has been kind of like the year, the 17 year, where, you guys got off, to somewhat of a slow start. The fans showed up over at the NovaCare Center with the signs, roll that blunt. Here in Philly, we want you to run the football. The Eagles experienced something a little different this year because, Saquon Barkley became the focal point of the offense, and it caused a lot of people in Philadelphia to wonder whether Jalen Hurts would be, the weak link when it comes to this point in the season. Now, he's been out almost 3 weeks in the concussion protocol, which I find just weird, but that's another story for another day.
I've never been in the protocol, so I can't say.
Listen, I get it, man, but if you're a repeat guy, then I understand it. But if this is like your first concussion, 3 weeks, and it looks like he just bumped his head on the ground a little bit.
We need him back. We need him back.
For sure, man. For sure. I think it's a strategic ploy by the Eagles because the Packers don't know who to prepare for, and they're going to go into practice tomorrow. They won't know whether he's clear protocol until until practice starts tomorrow. So it could be a strategic thing. But Brian made, such a valid point today about how adversity can kind of draw a team together. Everything from in the beginning with Nick Sirianni and him chirping at the fans in the stands to some of his, unfortunate calls. We almost lost the game against the Browns. And then him kind of evolving and growing as a coach. And then the kind of dust up between Jalen, if you will, if it's a dust up at all.
Alleged drama.
Yeah. So, I mean, he said, in a lot of ways, that kind of drama, that kind of adversity, he was kind of glad to see it, believe it or not. He said, because that's the kind of thing that forces a team to come together, work out the issues, and then move to another level. Your thoughts?
I would agree. If you have the right leadership in the building, and I believe there's one thing that Nick does really well, I think he communicates well. You talk to players about what his strengths are, And I think, as you know, Seth, so much of being a head ball coach is communication. It's social intelligence. It's being able to get on people's level, talk to them like peers. But when it's time, you're getting after their ass. And I think being able to, as a younger coach, get the guys to not retreat to their corners that week when things were kind of haywire in the media and that sort of thing, but like get together and have some tough conversations, which I'm sure happened. I don't know anything about it, but I'm sure it happened. And move on. I think a lot of times, two things. Number one, there's drama in every NFL building all the time, and we don't hear about it. It can be like Fort Knox, and a lot of information protection goes on in the NFL. And so sometimes when we hear that things aren't perfect between two players or within a unit or between two units, everybody thinks the sky is falling. Well, that can be business as usual. But I think the only way it gets better is if it's actually exposed a little bit to the point where guys have to work it out. You got to be able to pick that scab and move on. Scar tissue can't build up unless you open that thing up. And I think inadvertently, and maybe this is the brilliance of Brandon Graham, he opened up the can of worms a little bit, oversharing or maybe miscategorizing what was going on, whatever it was. I think this team is extremely close. I heard people in the media taking shots at the chemistry on this team who know nothing about the place. I heard some people saying things to the degree of there's a lot of egos on that team. When you got a lot of egos, number one, guess what? Everybody's got an ego in the NFL. You have to, or else you can't survive. Number two, to me, and this locker room, the best players are the best people. I hear great things about everybody I didn't play with and the guys I play with that I know their character. They're tremendous people. Your best players, whether it's Saquon Barkley, A.J. Brown, Lane Johnson, the quarterback, I haven't heard a bad thing about him. So these guys are good guys and they're tight. They've been through this. There are guys on this team that have been to a Super Bowl and lost. There are guys on this team that have been to a Super Bowl and won. Two totally different experiences. They've experienced it all. I'm not worried about the BS people were talking about this year. It's good they got over the hump on that. What they got to do is make plays and execute. And I think for Jalen, it's going to be a big one in a lot of senses because you are coming off a 3-week period, which you just talked about, where he is in concussion protocol. And you point out a really good point, which is that a lot of it is gamesmanship. And if you can get a team to waste their Wednesday wondering, are we going to have to deal with QB run or is it going to be a different kind of offense? Let's look at Tanner McKee's film, whatever it is. As a player, that's time you're not spending getting down to nuts and bolts. So hopefully it is gamesmanship. I worry about with the Eagles' slow starts, him coming out a little slow, coming off a concussion where he's been, seated for 3 weeks. But otherwise, man, it's just going to be about beating a team that you're better than. They're better than this team.
No, there's no doubt about that. It's funny that you talked about, the genius of Brandon Graham because Brandon Graham in year 15, I told people he knew exactly what he was doing. He realized, and you have to look at, Chris, you got to look at last year and the implosion of last season. And then you got to dive into the mind of Brandon. I talk to Brandon all the time. You got to dive into his mind and get and understand what he's thinking. He was like, there's no way in hell I'm going to let this shit happen 2 years in a row.
Yeah,
I'm going to push these guys out on Main Street, and I'm going to force them to have to deal with these issues and get it wrapped up because we have a legitimate shot at winning the Super Bowl. And they've got to iron it out, whatever the issues, whatever the conditions are.
Yeah, no, you're right. And it's so funny. When you look back at our year, I didn't think there was any drama. Then you'll hear guys like Sproles, who that's my dude. There's nobody better. And talking about maybe some of the, the drama with behind the scenes of maybe not capital D drama, but it's football drama where it's like, hey, he's just looking at tight ends or he's not going to. I didn't have any idea about that stuff, and that's just an example of being on the other side of the ball. It's sometimes like being in two different worlds. And that's not to say the team wasn't close, but sometimes you don't even know something's going on between two players in the locker room, period. And so, I think if BG exposed it on purpose, if there was any percentage where he made them get out on Front Street and handle it, then he is a genius.
I mean, when you talk about stuff like this, then, I begin to think about Nick Sirianni in a different light. You know, I wasn't a fan when they first hired him, through some of his ups and downs, I wasn't a fan. I wasn't a fan of how he handled the situation last year. But I learned from Doug Peterson. When Doug was announced as the head coach of this football team, I was like, Doug, who? And when Mark Lombardi came out with his comment, and the entire team came to Doug's defense.
Yeah.
And that forced me to say, okay, let me take a step back, because I know that when players are bought into a coach and they like the coach and they come to defend the coach, there are some things that are going on behind the scenes that I'm just not privy to, because players don't do that. If you don't believe in a coach,
You'll
just zip it and you won't say anything. Okay.
It's what you don't say.
Right.
That's player speak, right, Seth? What you don't say.
Yeah.
If a guy's asked a question about a teammate or a coach, what he doesn't say tells you everything, not what he says sometimes.
And I'm going to tell you, the same thing occurred with Nick this year. Okay.
Yeah.
When he was going through what he was going through, Brandon Graham was one of the first ones to come out. Hey, we just want Nick to be Nick.
Right.
Just be himself. And the players came to his defense, and he did a lot of growing.
Yeah.
In between, week 7 and week 17 or 18, in his decision making. There was times where the defense was playing really well, and it was 4th and 1, and he was like, we're gonna punt here instead of going for it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He made a lot of growth. And the thing that blows my mind, and I'm trying to figure it out, and I think I know why, but I think you can probably confirm it for me. When you're talking about all these other coaches that are up for Coach of the Year, Nick Sirianni is 49-19, okay? And yeah, the team's got a lot of talent on the team, but how do you have 2 14-win seasons in 3 years and your name never comes up for Coach of the Year?
I think there is a narrative, I'm not saying it's true, where, hey, the guy doesn't call any plays, and of course, when you have Dan Campbell, who's a front runner for the deal, he doesn't call any plays either. He's a culture guy. Nick's a culture guy. The culture might be harder to put your finger on. You know what I mean? Like, what the Detroit culture is. What's the Eagles culture? Well, it's working. I think it might be a little bit more subtle a thing. And the thing I just said, so much of being a head coach is being a communicator. There's guys with great schemes. There's guys with, sayings on the wall and, the whole thing. But when it comes down to nuts and bolts, it's about hiring the right guys, which they did this year. And I think Vic, especially being a guy, forget Kellen putting the fire out offensively is huge. But I think bringing that senior kind of leadership in, which Howie deserves credit for too, where it's like, hey, you got this young coach who really, he's been there, but it's been quick. It's been a whirlwind. Vic is that kind of grouchy elder statesman that's going to be yin to his yang and is going to help him get through some of these situations that are game management or program building or, this is how I would practice them this week. I'm sure there's so many instances where he goes upstairs and he's like, hey, Vic, what do I do? What did you do when you were a head coach for a second? Having a former head coach on the staff, I think, helps so much, even though this guy's had a couple years under his belt. And so, yeah, he's young. He's like my age. He's going to grow. And, another thing is he wears his emotions on his sleeve. I think that's what makes him good at what he does. But you have to learn the hard way sometimes that, hey, we don't want to see you mugging up fans after you beat Cleveland, right? And that's okay. It doesn't mean you want to see the guy's head roll. I think as a former player, I'm very careful about, criticizing, Nick, because you can easily get clickbaited and people take it out of context. I criticized him after that. I said he's got to grow up a little bit. He can't act like a player. I love the fact that he played and he has that thing about him. But at certain points, he has to act like the adult in the room. I think he's done a really good job of that as the season's gone on. And I do think, to the point of Coach of the Year, he does get the roster held against him. And I think he also gets the fact held against him that, listen, the results have been variable. It's been very coordinator dependent. You know, they had the right guy in Shane. It worked out. They had the wrong guy last year. It didn't work out on either side of the ball. The decision that he made or that the group made to go to Matt Patricia in flight, I think hurt them last year, right? And I think some of that is a hangover. Now, if he goes out and wins the damn Super Bowl, he'll never be left out of another conversation. And that's all that really matters, right? You know, bringing another Super Bowl to the city puts him in rare air. He's a legend.
Well, listen, Kellen Moore has all the toys that he could ever imagine having on that side of the ball. I'm impressed with Vic Fangio, man. I really am.
Me too.
Because all I heard when he came here was the voices of those players down at Miami that was bitching and complaining about how they didn't like him and he was too hard. There's a side of me that believes sometimes it's better to have young players on your roster than it is older players because the older players know too much.
They know too much.
Yeah, and they kind of get, in this rut of what they want to do.
Yeah.
But you bring a guy like Vic Fangio over here, and he's telling these young guys, this is what you have to do to get better. This is how you have to, and to his credit and Howie's, I'm a person that's always believed because I grew up in that era of having great coaches. So Wade Phillips was my linebacker coach my first 2 years. Then I had Jeff Fisher,
Fish, that was my guy.
For 3 years.
Yeah.
Bud Carson was my defensive coordinator. Fritz Shermer was my defensive coordinator. Yeah. So I've been around some heavy hitters, some guys that were so far ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
And the thing that I remember is these coaches helping me go from here to up here because they gave me tools in my toolbox to get better. Whether it was working on pass rush moves, whether it's working on moves, when you're rushing against a running back, whether it's trail technique when I'm covering a tight end, a wide receiver, or a back out of the backfield. Oh, yeah, back in the day, Buddy would put my ass out on a wide receiver and tell me to cover him, But they gave you the skill sets to actually do that. I feel like when you watch a young team and they don't progress over a 2-year span sometimes. You look at what this coaching staff on the defensive side of the ball and Vic Fangio has accomplished. They had 2 young rookies that have pretty much started all season long and played like veterans.
In the hardest positions to play.
You go and you bring C.J. Gardner-Johnson back. He's got to learn this new system. He's good on the back end with Reed Blankenship. He's always talking, sometimes too much, but he's always talking so you got good communication going on.
Yeah.
You go and you bring in, you look at a guy like Nakobe Dean. This was his prove-it year. If he doesn't show that he can be the guy, he's probably out of Philadelphia next year. And then you go and you bring in a special teams guy in Zach Bond that turns out to be a Pro Bowl linebacker.
Yeah.
Okay? Just think about what Vic Fangio has been able to do in a short period of time. And essentially, he did it in 5 weeks. The first 4 weeks, they were 4-4. They go into the bye. They come out the bye. Boom, they've run up to the number one total yardage defense in the National Football League.
Yeah, he's amazing. I mean, we talked about all the things you just said is he put his fingerprint on this year, however it ends, because, the defense we saw play Green Bay down in Brazil, the defense, which is why studying tape from week 1, it's almost like throw it out the window. This defense has changed so much. The Atlanta game, the way that ended, the pass rush, having to pull on the different levers of rush and coverage to find the right balance, the insertion of Cooper DeJean in the lineup, relying on Quinyon Mitchell to be out on an island as a young guy. I think part of that is credit to Howie for bringing in guys that Cooper came from Iowa, bro. Like that's a tough program. Quinyon, I heard a story about him where he didn't want to transfer and take more money because he wanted to finish with his guys. They're the right type of guys, man, and bringing in Zach Bond and just making a little tweak and saying, hey, maybe you just need to stay right here and focus on this skill set and we'll play you off the ball. Everything he's done has worked out. And I heard from a lot of people coming into this season, his style of defense is antiquated. People have caught up to it, the whole thing. You know what? And, the Miami guys didn't like him. You made a great point. Older guys can be a little stubborn and stuck in their ways, and they don't want to be pushed the same way. But I'll say this, the truest thing you said is when you can get a young guy and teach him the right habits, man, it's like a ball of clay. And conversely, I think also it paints a picture for fans at home who think, well, that rookie sucks, or that guy hadn't come along, or this guy. Look at Nakobe Dean. Look at certain guys that are in bad systems or in systems that don't fit them. My first 2 years in the league, I was playing right end. I don't play right end. You know what I mean? Like, as a rookie, I've been there where I know what it's like to have expectations and not meet them. And you can't say it out loud, but you're like, I'm not really doing what I'm accustomed to doing. And I don't know what I'm doing. And maybe I don't have the coaches that bring you along. Now, I think it's even more important now because, as you know, there's less veterans in the locker room. When I got in the locker room, thank God I had, Leonard Little, Leroy Glover, James Hall, all those guys, Fred Robbins, to help teach me, the professional side of it. But you still need a coach, a really good coach, to teach these guys the right habits on and off the field. And so those young guys are really lucky to be in this city, but also to come in the league and get coached by Vic Fangio.
And listen, I hope and pray that the staff that Vic has in place, that they can keep them here, because they're only going to get better. I think they've just scratched the surface of how good they can really be. And a guy like Vic has been around as long as he's been around. He's only giving them a percentage of what he's got up his sleeve, because he doesn't want to overload them. But when they get to a point where he can start dialing in some new things and adding some things to the equation, that this defense can be even much greater, man.
This is why you got to keep him. It's one of the only problem to me with not having a play calling head coach is both your coordinators are always available to be poached. And you've seen what it does with offenses when coordinators leave, and it can have a negative effect on a quarterback. And so I think it's really important, if they can retain these guys, to retain them. And, if they can build, like you said, here's another thing. Training camps like this long now. Back in the day, and I'm not trying to back in the day guy who could really back in the day me, but
back in the day guy, so don't worry about it.
Hey, I experienced a couple years of the old CBA training camps where, they're not as long as what y'all dealt with, but you had longer runway to build and enact your scheme and teach players and onboard rookies. So that even more so speaks to the excellence of Vic Fangio and what he's done developing this group.
All right, man. So listen, I want to be true to my word. I want to get you out of here by 8:30. So.
Okay, because I'm coming up to Philly.
Yes. So are you really?
Yeah, I got to go do the Inside the NFL show. We tape up there.
Cool.
Yeah.
So we got about 2.5 minutes.
Yeah.
Give my viewers your breakdown of what you see happening this week against this Packers team.
Well, I think obviously the Packers injuries hurt, right? Like, that looked like with Jair down, that's a big deal, right? Because you're going to love your matchup, whether it's, A.J. Brown or Devontae. I don't know where Quay Walker is at this point, but Evan Williams was down last week. You go into a game with the Chicago Bears and you kind of limp into it if you're the Packers, and you limp out of it with the quarterback dinged, with losing probably your big, deep threat, the guy that can stretch the field for you outside, in Christian Watson. And so, for an offense that's feast or famine, it's so predicated on the shots. Like, the Packers have to have the explosives to win. I feel like Vic is a very good match for that. They're going to try to keep things in front of them. It comes down to stopping the run. And as I'm sure you've alluded to, they got two good backs, one who's an absolute monster. I don't know if you're going to see more 5 down on early downs, right? Like, try to build a wall and stop this run and get him out of it. But I think really the game is going to be decided on the other side of the ball, in my opinion. When they were down in Brazil, I watched my man Lane Johnson lock up Rashawn Gary. I'm not worried about the offensive line so much. Kenny Clark always scares me. I think they got a good defensive line. That Cooper guy's a good playmaker, man. That linebacker, you got to watch him. You got to watch McKinney in the middle of the field. Like, that to me is – and Quay Walker might be back, might not. I don't know. I haven't looked. But to me, it's keeping the ball out of harm's way in the middle of the field, and avoiding the turnovers, being able to throw outside the numbers, access these guys, get the run game going. I see it going like if Jalen plays well, they're not going to be able to keep up. because I really do believe the Packers offense, if you watch them this year, is like they can be so frustrating. It's kind of feast or famine if you're watching them. And if they're not hitting their shots, they're going to be a little different. The Jaden Reed and Cooper DeJean matchup is going to be awesome. So that's one that I can't wait to see. It's one you got to win. I think the Eagles probably win this game by a touchdown. I would hope, like 27-20 type thing. But that's the playoffs, man. And, if Hurts has a bad game, if you fumble the ball, if you turn the ball over like you did, or you give up shots like you did against the Commanders, just bust things, like catch you with 12 on the field, dudes, communication issues. I really think LaFleur is a really good coach. And I think he's coaching for his job a little bit. Like there's Packers fans who kind of want to see his seat get hot. I think he's going to have his absolute best game plan. So don't sleep on these guys. But I think it's Eagles by a touchdown.
All right. We both think alike, my friend. I said 27-21. Boom.
There
right
we
on the number. And I'm going to let you get out of here, man. Listen, I appreciate it, man. It's always a pleasure chopping it up with you, man.
Seth, dude, much respect, man. And thanks for having me on the show.
You got it, my friend. Take care.
Okay, bro. See you.
All right, people, we're going to wrap it right there. Great show tonight. Great guest. Looking forward to Sunday. Fly, Eagles, fly, go Birds, and everything else, any other thing else you can come up with. So we're going to wrap the show right there as usual. You guys be good to each other and take care of each other. But most important, make sure you love each other. I'll see you guys right back here. Win, lose, or draw. Same place, same time. Peace.
Most people don't know how to get the care they need. The experts at Stay at Home Care can help. Before choosing a caregiver or family member for your care, you need to apply for the home care program. The application process can be complicated. Stay at Home Care can help you navigate through every step. Once approved, your caregiver or family member will receive guaranteed weekly pay, a variety of medical benefits options, paid holidays, paid vacation, and overtime pay. Call Stay at Home Care, here to help every step of the way.
Get peace of mind, try certified at DavisCertified.com.
How do you make sure your next vehicle purchase is a quality vehicle priced right? Go to DavisCertified.com.
Every Davis certified pre-owned vehicle has a 60-day, 2,000-mile powertrain warranty, plus 2 years of free oil changes, a 3-day exchange policy, and a free Carfax report.
Get peace of mind, try certified at DavisCertified.com.
Gentlemen, are you ready for a wardrobe update? Introducing Divine Nine's Custom Menswear, your clothier for truly unique, custom-made threads. With Divine Nine, you can design your own one-of-a-kind suit, jacket, slacks, shirts, golf pants, and shorts, perfectly handcrafted by our skilled artisans who will bring your vision to life. Prepare to stand out from the crowd with Divine Nine's Custom Clothier, official clothier of Seth Joyner. Custom clothing made for you.
Pride, passion, and persistence. These are the values that drive us all at Ron Jaworski Golf. We strive to deliver outstanding conditions as well as playability for golfers of all ages and abilities. Our championship golf courses offer a variety of challenges from a link-style walk along the river to an escape into the pines and everything in between. My team at Ron Jaworski Golf is committed to delivering memorable experiences every single day. See all we do at RonJaworskiGolf.com.
This is Parks. Parks, Pennsylvania's #1 casino experience. This is how you win.